All right, so we're here at the workshop with Luis Ramos. What's your comment here on the?
Well, I'm looking at a very historical moment in which our traditional headdressing featherwork is right here in Inwood Hill Park, or I should say Inwood, New York. And this is awesome where people can learn the traditional way of making a headdress. Past meets the present.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I see this as a good example in the people getting in tune with their culture. What's your take on that?
Well, thousands of years this technique was perfected, and then 1490 through 2 and so on, there was a break. So 500 years later, here we are. I think that's an awesome expression of culture right there. And once again, it shows our motivation that we are still here, and that we definitely are honoring our ancestors by continuing this tradition.
All right, so that I say pa'lante.
Pa'lante. Good job.
So we are here today at the workshop of headdresses by Cotubanama Ururu from Boriken, and it's here in New York. It's November 2014, and so we are a group of people who came to relearn the techniques of how to make our headdresses. The headdresses right now they mean the sovereignty of the indigenous people in Americas, from Alaska to Argentina. This is the representation that we are the owners of this land. And back in the times and now, still now, when we are gathering together in our ceremonies or nations are gathering together, they mean the status of the person. The people who can wear a headdress are just the leaders of the communities, and no one else can wear them because you can wear them just when you deserve it, when you do something important for your communities. So that's it, and respect headdresses. Yes, not using in Halloween and things like that. This is a real meaning of leadership.
With great importance.
Yes, of great importance in our cultures.
Okay.
allá donde está la luz, hermanito. Que voy para allá ahora contigo. Vino ahorita mi asistente, se llama. Es medio grouchy, pero fíjate, es una gente. Entonces, a buscarte el otro video. Your finger should be here.
Ah, ok.
Yeah.
Ah, pues mira, la puedo borrar. Ya yo sé cómo borrarla. Ok, mira.
Ah, I see now.
Yeah, bring it this way, bring it el hilo.
Ok.
It's going to be uneven. So, si amarras, viste, cuando tú amarras te para acá. El hilo está para frente. Si amarras este nudo hacia acá, vas a tener... Bueno, sí, el nudo dispara.
So this is okay? Or
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
That all depends on you.
I know, it's far. This is the tip of the island.
This is actually the harder way because you get close. No tenga miedo tampoco. So once you have that, it's nice and tight.
I'm here with Cotubanama, and we are here at the Art of Featherwork workshop. We were talking earlier about pre-Columbian arts. If we can just build on that, just explaining what it represents.
Okay, when I mean pre-Columbian arts, I obviously it's not that my artwork is, it's not that what I sell is pre-Columbian. It's that my art is based on pre-Columbian art. It is actually almost done the same way. There are pieces that I do, which is most of them that there's no machine. There's actually true all knives. Sometimes the knives are made out of some type of stone. You know, and that's why it's called pre-Columbian Ururu, pre-Columbian art. Not only that, but the artifacts that I do, they have exactly the same markings that they're supposed to. Just like if I do a replica of Nese Bayamanakoel, you can rest assured that Bayamanakoel is going to have actually all the signs, the geometric designs that he must and he should have. So this is why my art is called pre-Columbian arts. There will be a little adjustment to it for, you know, I know there's a lot of controversy with that, but it's just that, you know, it's the closest you're going to get to actually pre-Columbian art.
Right. All right then. So until next time.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right.
Don't even say it. See, it has to fall right in the middle, because if you're like this or like this, what happens is that when you put the feather, it's going to twist a little bit, and then later on, to try and stand up, will be impossible. But if you do it from the get-go, you're going to correct.
All right. So if I can get your comment, what's your opinion on people in our community not recognizing the elements in the Taino community as far as, you know, organizing, getting together? Because I know there are some differences and misunderstandings. So what is your take and an opinion on that?
Well, one of the greatest inventions in the past 10 years has been Facebook or MySpace, you know, social media, in which thousands of people can gather as one in cyberspace, you know, Tainos from all over. But what happens, I think we get too comfortable. We have been too comfortable in cyberspace, and I believe that the community-based gatherings have suffered a lot. You know, and it's very convenient, especially if we live far. But those that live close, like here in New York City, I think it's important that gathering, the spirit of gathering, like you know, community gathering, community-based gathering is very, very important. In Spanish, comunidad base, you know, those base communities need to be set.
Just to piggyback on that quickly, I remember at Indigenous Day of Remembrance, I was sitting down with Esperanza Mateo, and she said something very important, and particularly to the youth. And she was saying, and I'm paraphrasing this in my own words and opinion, that the people, especially the youth, need to get active and to get involved. So just being behind a computer is not going to do anything. Yes, we have our differences, but coming together, you know, it generates action, you know, and at the same time, it helps each one of us to move forward.
Listen, just the other day I was watching a TV series called Arrow. It's a comic strip. It's based on a comic strip called The Green Arrow, and the main character uses an arrow, bow and arrow, to get the bad guys down, you know. So for the first time, my daughter asked me if I can teach her how to, go to archery school. So I got on the phone with a good friend of mine, Tom, who owns a business, Kids Adventures, and he teaches actually children and adults how to make a bow, traditional bow, and arrows. So I got on the phone, sent him a Facebook message, and it's gonna happen. You gotta start where kids are at, the youth, and you can't get as traditional as archery. So I'm gonna start that in the grassroots level and see what happens. But that's just an example of how we have to really start where the children are at.
Right, I agree.
Using those traditional tools as a way of bringing the kids in, and adults, of course. Gotta get them involved.
All right.
All right,
so we on. Introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Gregorio, Taino, de República Dominicana, and we're over here in New York City doing this interview.
Yeah, so, we've been building up for a while, so now we finally, get to have this discussion, So, we had this workshop that just passed with Cotubanama. It was a headdress workshop. What was your take on that?
Oh, my take is that anything that promotes the identity and the culture, I think that it's our responsibility as people, as indigenous descended people, to pay mind to that, pay heed to it, and to find out everything that we can. And the headdresses, the artesanía, all the art, that's a huge part of everything that we're about, culture. So, yeah, everything is great about it.
Yeah. I know we've been having this discussion for a while, but this is the first time that we got to really get into this on video. So let's relate this with the campo, because I know you talked to me a lot about that stuff, and there's like a lot of elements there that people are not really aware about, especially the people in the campos themselves. Like,
right.
Let's start with not recognizing the elements that are presented in the culture. Like, what's your take?
I'll put it like this. So clearly we're Caribbean people, and we're all mixed, right? So eliminate the question of race, really, because it's there. It's just it's all mixed up. So the thing is with the culture is that when people don't recognize part of the race, that because it is a factor, then they miss out on things. In other words, my father grew up in a boyo, right? We had a rayo and the sing and all the artifacts or whatever, baskets hanging off of the ceiling. Like, you would think you were in the Amazon. Right. But at the same time, that's just how it's been. It's always been like that in the country.
Right.
And people still live that way.
Right.
But at the same time, you ask those people about the Indians, and you'll get the response, oh, the poor Indians, why'd the Spanish have to kill all of them? You'll get that kind of a thing. You'll get that from the most Indian-looking people. That phenomenon is seen all over Latin America, not just where I'm from.
Right.
And I saw it all over the island, because the last time that I went south, north, and east. Before that, I went west, and it was the same deal. So there's no escaping that for some people, but for most of us, that's what I think that is really important, is to raise awareness about our roots. That's really what it comes down to. So all the Indian stuff that you see in the island, people will discount it, or they'll say, oh, that's a Dominican thing. Well, yeah, maybe now, but what are the roots to that? That's what I'm curious about.
Okay.
And all of that exists. All of that exists. The religiosity, work with stones and all that, and you don't necessarily have to believe any of it, but just recognizing that the elements exist and that they're there, that's crucial.
Right.
Right. So that's my opinion on that.
All right. The second one, I think this is a really important one. A lack of awareness.
Right.
Like, I know, I hear a lot that a lot of the people from the campos are afraid to say Indio. So what's your take on that?
Some of them some of them are. Like, there is that stereotype because of the lack of understanding of history, that people have these stereotypes about Indians. One of them being that either they're dumb or, you know, they're easy to trick or they're gullible, that kind of a thing. But again, that's a lack of awareness, because these people are, when I hear that kind of a thing, it really, really bothers me, you know what I mean? Because, well, that's where I come from, and that's where they come from too. They're just not realizing it.
Right.
And that's a really sad part.
So what about interest? Like, what's it gonna take to like get them to recognize who they are? You know?
Well, it's just a matter of talking about it and identifying those elements and displaying that to people. And that's part of what we do on the Facebook page, actually, called Golpe de Gamao. If you want to join that and, you know, come to see things that maybe you didn't see in the past, or connect some dots that you didn't necessarily connect, maybe out of lack of interest or maybe out of lack of resources. Well, there's a resource, you just have to have the interest.
Right.
You know? So that's in place for everybody to take advantage of, as long as you got a Facebook account, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's funny you bring up interest, because I think, you know, Golpe de Gamao, you know, it really, you know, pulls a lot of people together. And I think it's a, you know, very important tool to utilize, especially, you know, just to get the word out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree fully.
So
That's the direction that we're heading to. Every day, more and more people. Every day I hear Caribbean people saying Taino this or Taino that. And it's not necessarily maybe that they feel that they are. But again, they're more aware. Sorry. So it's some of the work that the people here have been doing in the Taino community is coming to fruition now, you know, and it has been for a while, and it's just speeding up. The pa'lante que vamos, that's it.
right, pa'lante. So what's your take on the availability of the resources? Like, as far as, you know, people being able to acquire information, you know, that those are seeking to learn about, you know, their culture and heritage.
Well, see, the big deal really is raising awareness between everybody that's here in New York City, in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in back on the islands, you know, on all of them, Jamaica, Haiti, Quisqueya, Cuba, Boriken, everywhere, where we are, right? And now some of those places are more difficult than others, but if you look at what people are doing, like George, for example, he went over to DR the other day, and he's working stuff out with them. There's Puerto Ricans that we're talking to, and we're going places with them, Cotu being one of them with his artwork and everything. And, you know, there's artesanos back home.
Right.
Because over here it's kind of easier. You know, it's kind of easier to find people who are with this mentality, because what we're recognizing is a disconnect between our parents or grandparents or whatever who were raised over there and we're raised here.
Right.
So we miss out on stuff. But for some of us, maybe we'll go over there and we'll see something that'll spark our interest. We come back here, and then we find this whole thing kind of set up. Over there, it's more rural. It's more difficult.
Right.
So with the people that we have there, they're really loud about it too. So in some places, like in Way with Leonel, for example, he's always doing something. He's always doing some kind of art where he's talking to people and spreading awareness and sparking interest and consciousness among the people. So all of that combined, I think, will eventually make it so that the resources are available both here and over there. Online is a great resource, as previously stated, just because of it's so accessible. You know, as long as you have an internet cafe within an hour away from it, you know, you can get access to this stuff. And also just asking your parents, asking your grandparents and everything. Because they have stories. They have a lot of stories. And the thing is that sometimes you'll ask them about things and you'll get a story, and you, at the moment, you might not be able to understand it. You know? Maybe how, like, it doesn't even make sense, or maybe you learn a life lesson. I'll give you an example. My father was telling me about how when he was a boy, or his brother was a boy, he went into a field, and this field was his father's friends, right? So he figured, oh, I could take a couple of mangoes or whatever. So he went, he knocked down a whole bunch of fruit and whatever. He took whatever he wanted, and his pops finds out, and they talk about it, and he learns that that's stealing, right? So that kind of thing, it's set on the island. It's set within the cultural kind of confines of where Taino people were and where they are, for so long in history, that it's kind of like I could imagine that kind of a thing being something that somebody would have said 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. And back in, it's that kind of primal wisdom, that I think is important.
Right.
And we kind of miss out on that when we move over here. All those things transform, and we learn the same lessons, just differently. You gotta hold on to the values.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
The honest values.
So, I see another thing, what about reliability? Do you feel like it's a challenge, as far as, getting the word out? What's...
For the moment, yeah. Hopefully these videos actually, they do work to help alleviate that, so that we can spread this idea and this awareness farther. It's an interesting thing, when you grow up hearing all the Indians are dead, like I did, and meanwhile, a few years later, you're reading genetic studies that, it turns out at least 15% of Dominicans carry the marker,
right.
The Indian marker.
Right.
So we have a percentage of DNA within us,
right.
Some of us anyway.
Right.
Same thing in Cuba, and same thing in Boriken right now, as far as I know. I don't know about any other studies in the other islands. But, in Puerto Rico, it's 60%. And that's nuts. You grow up with this false history, and that's what we're trying to turn around.
Right.
That all these things were lost, and that the race is gone, and everything. It's not necessarily true. We're a little mixed, that's all. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. At the workshop, at the headdress workshop with Cotubanama, me and Luis were having a conversation about community-based gathering. So, what's your take on community growing? What's your opinion on that?
Well, like I said, it's going to continue to grow, as it has been. And the ball's rolling. That's all there is to say, really. Just need a little time.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, we're going to grow.
I agree. Yeah, so let's close it out with this. So what's your take on the importance of people getting involved?
Oh, you have to get involved, right? In some way or another, even if it's just gaining knowledge or whatever. If you're not interested in, the feathers or whatever, whatever reason, whatever inhibition you might have, that's fine. As long as you take the time out to learn about it and everything. Only so that you're more aware. I'm talking to us Caribbean people right now. Just so that everybody's more aware. Because I think that it's useful when you're able to recognize elements within your own culture, within your own family, within your own history. And we have to remember that this is important. Why? Only because it was actually hidden from us.
Right.
And it was brainwashed right out of us, right out of our ancestors, is what I'm saying. Years and years ago. So that they couldn't even recognize what they were when they looked in the mirror.
Right.
You'd be really shocked, really, really Indian-looking people, and they have no idea when they look in the mirror. Like I said, that's all over Latin America. So we got to reverse that trend. We got to make sure that people are aware of their history. That's what it comes down to.
No, I agree.
But one last thing, because I have to make this point, is the deal with the identity, the actual identity. Because to a degree, when you're mixed, you don't really have a choice, right? You're all these things. But culturally, what do you identify more with, right? And that's a serious question. The thing is that some governments allow you to choose that, and some governments don't. In other words, here in the U.S., if you can mark down whatever you want on the census, and nobody's gonna stop you.
Right.
But in DR, where I'm from, I'm gonna tell the story. I went to go get my ID card, right? Citizen, both citizen of here and there. So I went to go get my ID card, and it was a whole process. I had to go to the junta. And I sat down in an office with a woman, and she's figuring everything out or whatever. And there's a category for skin color. It's called piel, so your skin color. And there used to be 3 categories as far as I know, which was blanco, indio, and negro. Now there's blanco, mulatto, and negro. In other words, where my mother would have been an Indian, even if it's just, you know, to them they say that it's just a skin color. But I think that it's somewhat of an indicator of race as well. Now they eliminated indio, and there's just mulatto, where that place was. Now, you know, clearly I got black and white race in me. So that term, maybe it makes some kind of sense. But, you know, I am my mother's son, right? So whereas she can be Indian, I can't. And that's the position that the government is taking. So I want to denounce that. I really do. Because I feel like that's hurtful not only to the individual and how they see themselves, but also detrimental to society. Because it's just further elimination. That's all it is. They wanna silence that side of the conversation, and that's not gonna happen. You know, plain and simple. I don't care what government says what.
Right.
You know, we are who we are, and we were who we were, and we'll continue to be just that. You know, this time with awareness and sovereignty, hopefully. That's my take.
Definitely. And with that, until next time.
Until next time.
All right.